When I walked down the hall, I saw them. My husband and my son's fiancée, standing too close, smiling like nothing in the world could touch them. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just stood there, my heart breaking in perfect silence. People think betrayal is loud. But real betrayal, it whispers. It hides in small gestures, a touch on the arm, a look that lasts a second too long. And that's when I knew. She wasn't my enemy. He was. The man I shared my bed with had stolen more than my trust. He had stolen my peace. So before I take you back to that moment when my world cracked, hit subscribe, leave a like, and tell me where you're from. Because this isn't a story about pain. It's about the quiet power that rises after it. Now, let's start from that morning. The morning light in Atlanta has a way of sneaking in quiet, like it knows the world isn't quite ready yet. That's how it felt that day. Soft blue light slipping through the blinds, the faint hum of the old gospel station on my radio. I'd been up for hours, not because I couldn't sleep, but because my mind refused to rest. My son Elias was getting married that afternoon, and every detail had to be perfect. The flowers, the food, the vows, it all had to say love still means something in this world. I moved through the kitchen the way I'd done for years, put on the kettle, folded napkins, checked lists twice. After 25 years of marriage, routine becomes a kind of prayer. My husband, Franklin, used to tease me about it. He'd say, "You're the glue of this family, Marian." But lately, I've been wondering if that glue was starting to crack. He'd become distant, quiet in ways that made too much noise. Late nights at the office, locked phone screens, smiles that ended before they reached his eyes. I told myself it was work stress, the years. But the truth? I'd been ignoring my own intuition, pretending peace was the same as silence. I paused at the kitchen window, watching the sky go from blue to gold. The morning smelled like rain that never came. The house was too still, like it was holding its breath. That's when I heard the floorboard creak behind me. My son stood in the doorway, hair messy, coffee mug in hand, wearing that same nervous half-smile he used to wear on the first day of school. "Mom," he said quietly, "do you think Madison really loves me?" His voice cracked on that word, really. Not a boy's question, but a man's confession. I froze for a second. Madison, his fiancée, was beautiful, driven, always polite. The kind of girl you'd want your son to marry. But something in her eyes. I caught it once or twice. A flicker of calculation beneath the charm. Still, what could I say? That love is sometimes an equation you don't know the answer to until it's too late. I smiled instead, soft and steady. "She chose you, son. That means something." He nodded, but his eyes drifted. He didn't believe me. Maybe I didn't believe myself. He kissed my cheek, said he was going for a run to clear his head. When he left, the house swallowed the sound of his footsteps, and I was alone again, with the hum of the radio and my reflection in the window glass. I caught my own face in the light, lines deeper than last year. Eyes tired but still alert. The kind of face that's learned to keep going even when the ground shifts under her feet. The song on the radio changed. An old hymn I used to sing with my mother. "Walk with me, Lord, while I'm on this tedious journey." The note hit something in me, something fragile. I closed my eyes for a moment and whispered, "I'm walking, Lord. I'm still walking." It was 8:17 when Franklin finally came downstairs, smelling of cologne too new for an old suit. He kissed my forehead, the way he always did when he wanted to seem loving without saying much. "You've been up since dawn," he said, grinning that charming grin everyone else still fell for. "You'll wear yourself out before the big moment." I laughed politely. "I'm a mother, Franklin. We don't wear out, we endure." He chuckled, adjusted his cufflinks, and glanced at his watch. "Oh, before I forget, Madison's coming by at 10. She wants to finalize the seating chart." The words hung in the air longer than they should have. 10 o'clock. My stomach twisted before I could even understand why. Something about his tone, that slight spark of eagerness in his eyes. It wasn't the way a man looked when talking about his son's fiancée. It was the way a man looked when he was about to see a secret. I forced a smile. She could have called, I said lightly. He shrugged. You know Madison, she likes to handle things in person. Then he kissed my temple again and left the room humming a tune that didn't sound like anything I knew. I stood there motionless. The clock ticked. The kettle whistled. My pulse matched both. I wanted to shake the feeling off, tell myself I was imagining things, but my heart had already started keeping score. I looked down at my planner, the list of florists, caterers, timelines, and wrote one more thing in the margin. 10 a.m. be home. The sunlight shifted, catching the edge of my wedding ring. For years that ring had felt like a promise carved in gold. That morning it felt like a question. Outside, a bird landed on the windowsill, pecked once, then flew away. The radio crackled softly behind me, the preacher's voice fading in and out. The truth may rest for a while, but it never dies. I turned off the radio and whispered to myself, then let it wake up. And just like that, I knew I wouldn't leave the house that morning. I'd stay, watch, listen. Because sometimes, peace isn't found in praying things are fine. It's found in being still long enough to see when they're not. If you've ever had a morning where your gut whispered before your mind caught up, you'll understand. That's where my story begins. Stick with me, it only gets quieter before it gets loud. The next morning started like any other, but something in the air felt off. Elias sat across from me at the kitchen table, poking at his eggs like a man trying to solve a puzzle. The coffee between us was still steaming when he finally said, "They talk too much, Mom. About stocks, not about me." I looked up. They? Dad and Madison. He said it so casually, but there was an ache buried under that calm. Every time I walk in, they're talking about some new investment or market trends or whatever. She laughs at all his jokes like he's the smartest man alive. I tried to laugh it off. Well, your dad's been around a while. He knows a thing or two. But Elias just shook his head. Yeah, but she's marrying me, not him. His words landed heavier than he meant them to. I opened my mouth to reassure him, but the image of Franklin looking at Madison flashed through my mind. His eyes lingering a little too long. His smile too familiar. I remembered the dinner last week. How Madison giggled when Franklin poured her wine before anyone else's glass was empty. I told myself it was nothing. A kind gesture. Good manners. But something in my gut whispered different. I forced a smile. You're just nervous, baby. Big day coming up. He nodded, though he didn't look convinced. Maybe. But sometimes I feel like I'm the extra in my own story. After he left, I sat there in silence, staring at the empty chairs around the table. For a second, I thought I could still hear his words echoing off the walls. I tried to shake the thought, to push it into the drawer where all mothers hide their fears. I'm just tired, I told myself. But deep down, I knew tired wasn't the word. You see, when a woman's tired but her husband's phone ain't, that's not insomnia. That's intuition. I actually laughed when I said it out loud. The kind of laugh that sounds like a cough, half humor, half heartbreak. Because even in that moment I was trying to keep things light, trying to be the strong one. That's what we do, isn't it? We joke so we don't drown. Later that morning, Franklin came down in his tailored shirt, smelling like expensive confidence. He kissed my cheek, all charm and cologne. "Morning, sweetheart. You look beautiful." I wanted to believe him. But when I caught his reflection in the window, checking his phone, smiling at whatever was on the screen, my stomach twisted. "Big day tomorrow," I said. "Everything's ready." He didn't look up. "You always make things perfect, Marian. That's what I love about you." He said it smoothly, automatically, like a man signing his name on a check. Then he grabbed his keys, humming under his breath, and headed toward the door. "Where you off to?" I asked casual as I could. He hesitated just long enough for me to notice. "Meeting a client. Won't be long." That pause, God, it said everything. I'd been married to that man for 25 years. I knew every version of his truth, every rhythm in his lies. When the door closed, the house fell into that kind of silence that makes you hear your own heartbeat. I stood there a long while, then walked to the drawer where I kept my little leather journal. It wasn't much, just a place I wrote things I couldn't say out loud. I flipped to a blank page and wrote one sentence. "If peace won't come to me, I'll go and find it." My hand trembled when I put the pen down. I didn't know what that meant yet, not exactly. But it felt like a promise to myself, not to him. I sat by the window again, staring at the street. Neighbors waved as they passed. The mail truck rattled by. The world moved on like it always does. But inside me something shifted. Maybe it started years ago. The slow fade of laughter, the careful smiles, the quiet dinners where words felt too expensive to spend. Maybe I just stopped noticing when love turned into habit. But that morning, for the first time in a long time, I noticed everything. The untouched toast on Franklin's plate. The faint perfume that wasn't mine clinging to his jacket. The way his goodbye didn't sound like "see you later," but like "see you when I have to." I closed my journal, ran my fingers over the cover and whispered, "All right then." Because sometimes the only way to heal is to stop pretending you're not hurt. And sometimes the quietest women are the ones planning their loudest truth. I didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew one thing for sure. The peace I'd been begging for wasn't coming. Not on its own. And that, right there at my kitchen table, was the moment I decided I'd go find it myself. At exactly 10 that morning, the sound of tires on gravel pulled me to the window. A white BMW rolled up the driveway, shining like it didn't belong in our yard. Madison stepped out, perfect hair, perfect smile, that kind of calm confidence only people with clean consciences have. Or the kind they fake when they think no one's watching. Then the door opened. Franklin. My husband. His smile hit her before the sunlight did. I froze halfway up the stairs, one hand on the railing, heart beating so loud I thought they'd hear it. From where I stood, I could see everything through the glass. His hand brushing her shoulder, resting there a second too long. She didn't flinch. She leaned into it. It was the kind of touch you don't mistake, not even after 25 years of marriage. It wasn't fatherly. It wasn't friendly. It was possession. It was betrayal wrapped in daylight. My throat tightened. Every instinct in me screamed to run down there, to tear open the front door, to ask him who he thought he was. But before I could move, I heard a voice behind me. "Don't, Mom. Not yet." I turned and there was Elias, standing in the hallway, pale, eyes sharp but trembling. He looked older than he had yesterday. Too old for his age. "What are you doing here?" I whispered. He didn't answer at first. He just stepped closer, watching his father through the same window I was. "I've known for weeks," he said finally. His voice cracked on that last word. "I hired someone." For a second I thought I'd misheard him. "You what?" He swallowed hard. "A private investigator. Aunt Aisha helped me." I didn't want to believe it, but he took out his phone, unlocked it and handed it to me. There they were. Franklin and Madison. In a hotel lobby. At dinner. In an elevator. His hand on her waist, her smile tilted toward him. Every picture felt like a punch. I couldn't breathe. The man who'd held my hand through childbirth, who'd prayed with me when we lost our first home, was now standing outside kissing his son's fiancée. I wanted to cry, to scream, to throw that phone across the room. But instead, I just stood there. Quiet. Numb. My heart was breaking, but my pride refused to let it show. I looked at my son. He wasn't crying either. His jaw was tight, his face frozen somewhere between anger and disbelief. I didn't want to tell you, he said. I thought maybe it would stop. That he'd realize what he's doing. I took a deep breath. And she? He laughed bitterly. She's good at pretending. She talks about loyalty like it's a brand she sells. Outside, Franklin's laugh echoed faintly through the open window. Madison was showing him something on her phone, both of them smiling like they were in their own world. I felt the air leave my chest. 25 years. That's how long I'd carried that marriage. I'd bent until my back hurt, swallowed anger, turned loneliness into chores, silence into prayer. But this was different. This wasn't a crack. This was collapse. Elias wiped his face with his sleeve. What do we do, Mom? I looked out the window again. The sunlight hit the glass so hard I could see both of us reflected in it. Me and my son, two broken people standing in the frame of a perfect house. Behind the glass, the man who destroyed it all. Something inside me steadied. My pulse slowed. My breath came back. We don't scream, I said softly. We don't throw things. Not yet. He looked at me confused. Then what? I turned toward him, and for the first time that morning, I felt the weight of my own clarity. Then today, son, we build our own altar of truth. He frowned, but I could see the understanding forming. Revenge wasn't fire. It was patience. It was light. I closed the curtain slowly, hiding their laughter from my sight. You let him keep thinking he's untouchable, I whispered. You let her believe her lies are working. Because when truth walks in, it doesn't knock. It breaks the door clean off. Elias nodded, eyes wet but fierce. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I saw a piece of his father's strength in him, but reshaped, cleaner, sharper. He asked, you have a plan, don't you? I smiled. Not the kind of smile you give when you're happy. The kind you give when you've made peace with the storm that's coming. I don't need a plan yet. Just the truth. And now I glanced at his phone. We have it. Outside, Franklin waved goodbye to Madison, touching her hand one last time before she left. He watched her car disappear down the road, then stood there satisfied. I wondered if he could feel it, the shift in the air, the quiet before the fall. I stepped back from the window and said, almost to myself, he thinks he's building a life. But really he's digging a grave. Elias didn't respond. He didn't have to. We both knew this was no longer about heartbreak. It was about clarity. The kind that hurts first, then heals later. And right there, in the golden light of late morning, a new silence settled over us. Not the silence of fear or shame, but of purpose. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was the first step toward it. When Elias said, Aunt Aisha helped me, my heart skipped. I hadn't heard that name in months. My little sister, once a detective, now running her own private investigation firm, wasn't the kind of person you called unless you really wanted the truth. And truth, in my experience, rarely came without a price. That night I called her. She picked up on the second ring. Marian, she said, her voice calm but heavy. I was wondering when you'd reach out. I sat at my desk staring at the journal I'd been writing in all week. Elias told me you were involved. A pause. You ready to see it for yourself? The next morning, she showed up at my house with her laptop bag slung over her shoulder. Same no-nonsense look she'd had since she was 15. Aisha was never one for small talk. She went straight to the table, opened the laptop and said quietly, he's been meeting her for months. And there's more. The screen lit up, bright against the dim kitchen light. Franklin. Madison. St. Regis Hotel. The kind of place people went when they wanted luxury and secrecy. There they were in photo after photo, walking side by side, his hand on her back, her laugh too familiar. My breath caught in my throat. I whispered, my God, Aisha. But she didn't stop there. She clicked to another folder. Receipts. Transfers. Transactions. Every month, she said, tapping the screen from your joint account. I leaned in. That's not possible. She gave me that look, half pity, half warning. You know I don't bring anything I can't prove. I felt my chest tighten. So he's been using my money to fund his affair? Aisha didn't answer right away. Instead, she opened one last file. It was quieter now, the kind of quiet that makes you hear the clock ticking across the room. Then she said it. He's been paying another woman for 15 years. A woman named Nicole Jenkins. My mouth went dry. 15 years. She nodded. And she has a daughter. 15 years old. For a second, the words didn't even register. My mind tried to rearrange them into something less cruel. But there was no softer version. It meant exactly what it sounded like. I sat back, the chair creaking under me. You're telling me Franklin's been? Yes. Aisha's tone was firm, but there was kindness in her eyes. He's her father. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even cry. My hands trembled against the wood table. I thought about every anniversary, every vacation, every time he'd kissed my forehead before leaving for business trips. I thought about how many times I'd defended him to friends, told them he was just stressed, just tired. 15 years. 15 years of lies woven into my life like invisible thread. Aisha reached over, touching my hand lightly. You don't have to decide anything today, she said. Just breathe. You've got time. But I wasn't thinking about time. I was thinking about the mirror in our bedroom, the one where I used to catch his reflection when he smiled at me. I realized I'd been loving a ghost, the man slowly disappearing while pretending to stay. I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, the wind picked up, pushing the branches against the glass. A storm was coming, literal and otherwise. Behind me, Aisha closed the laptop. Marian, she said gently, whatever you decide to do, make sure it's not just revenge. Make it a lesson. I turned to her, voice low. He taught me plenty. I'm just returning the education. For the first time that day, she smiled, a small, proud smile. That's my sister. We didn't talk much after that. She packed her things, said she'd send me copies of everything, and left me alone with the silence. I stared at the now dark screen, seeing my reflection in it. The woman looking back wasn't broken, just emptied out. Somewhere deep down, though, something else had begun to form. The kind of calm that didn't come from forgiveness, but from knowing the storm's direction. Later that night, I imagined him alone. Not yet, but someday soon, sitting in a quiet apartment, TV flickering, no one left to lie to. Maybe that's what justice looks like sometimes. Not a courtroom, not a headline, just a man facing the echo of his own choices. I whispered into the dark, you built this, Franklin. Every brick, every lie. And when it falls, you'll know exactly why. Then I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I slept without waiting for him to come home. Aisha came back 2 days later. Her face set in that no-nonsense calm that only bad news ever wears. She didn't even take off her coat, just walked straight to my dining table, laid down a folder thick with papers and said quietly, you might want to sit down for this. I did. I think I already knew it wasn't going to be good. She flipped the folder open, pages full of numbers and signatures. These are withdrawals from your joint retirement account, she said. Somebody forged your name. I stared at the paper. My name in my own handwriting, or close enough to fool a bank. You're saying he? She nodded. Franklin took out nearly $40,000 over the last year. It's been traced to luxury purchases, hotels, flights. She hesitated, then added perfume. The same brand Madison wears. The air went still. For a long second, all I could hear was the hum of the refrigerator and the pounding of my heart. He stole my future, I whispered, to buy someone else's perfume. Aisha didn't speak. She just let the silence hold it. Then she handed me one more envelope, small, sealed, heavier than I expected. I didn't want to show you this until I was sure. I tore it open with shaking hands. Inside, a lab report. A paternity test. I skimmed the lines until I found it. Probability of paternity: 99.98%. I didn't even realize I'd stopped breathing until Aisha reached across the table and touched my arm. "The girl," she said softly. 15 years old. Nicole Jenkins's daughter. She's his. Something inside me cracked, but not in the way people expect. There was no scream, no curse, no breaking glass. Just a quiet, collapsing kind of pain. Like watching a house burn down from the inside while everyone else calls it beautiful. I folded the paper carefully, as if being gentle with it would make it less cruel. Then I stood up and walked outside. The air was cold, sharp. I needed to move to breathe. Aisha followed me out to the car. We sat there for a while, not saying a word. Finally I spoke. "This isn't a report," I said, holding the test up between my fingers. "It's a tombstone." Aisha turned toward me. "You don't have to do anything tonight," she said softly. "Let it sit." "But how do you let something like that sit?" My marriage, my trust, my years, all rewritten in a single sheet of paper. I leaned my head back against the seat, eyes stinging but dry. I wasn't crying. I think I'd run out of tears weeks ago, back when I first saw Franklin's hand on Madison's back. What I felt now wasn't grief. It was the kind of stillness that comes after a storm has already taken everything. The knock on the window startled me. It was Elias, my son. He must have seen Aisha's car and come looking. I rolled the window down, forcing a small smile. "Hey, sweetheart." He didn't say anything at first. Just opened the door, slid into the back seat, and reached forward, resting his hand gently on my shoulder. "We'll handle this together, Mom." Those 6 words, simple, quiet, did more for me than 1,000 apologies ever could. For a moment, I saw his father's old kindness in him, before life hardened it. But there was something else too, something steadier. The kind of strength Franklin never had. I turned slightly, meeting his eyes. "You shouldn't have to carry this." He shook his head. "You carried me. I can carry this." That was it. No speeches, no drama. Just that. Quiet love. The kind that doesn't need to fill the silence, because it already understands it. We sat there like that for a while, 3 people in a parked car, each processing a different kind of truth. Aisha's phone buzzed once, but she silenced it immediately. The world could wait. Finally I exhaled. "He's taken enough," I said. "My money, my peace, my time. But he's not taking my dignity." Elias squeezed my shoulder lightly. "Then we take it back." I smiled, faint but real. The kind that feels like the first breath after being underwater too long. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the folded paper still in my hand. I tucked it gently back into the envelope. "You know what this is, Elias?" I asked. He shook his head. "It's not just proof," I said. "It's a blueprint for how not to live a lie." Outside, the streetlight flickered on, casting a pale glow over the car. For a second, I could almost imagine the world was calm again, that everything broken could someday be rebuilt. We drove home in silence, but it wasn't the kind of silence that hurts. It was the kind that heals. And as we pulled into the driveway, I realized something. Franklin may have stolen years from me, but he'd also given me back something I didn't know I'd lost. A reason to start over, and a son who stood beside me in the truth. And somehow that felt like enough for tonight. We met in my study that night. The 3 of us sitting in a circle that felt more like a war room than a family meeting. Papers covered the table, laptop screens glowed in the half-dark, and the air was heavy with something sharper than grief. Elias leaned forward, tapping a stack of documents Aisha had just laid out. "We've got everything," he said. Receipts, transfers, hotel records. It's airtight. Aisha nodded. He won't be able to talk his way out of this. But we need to do it right. Step by step. I took a slow breath, looking between them, my son with anger burning just beneath his calm, and my sister steady as always. I'd spent years being the quiet one in this family, the one who soothed, not shouted. But that night I wasn't quiet. I was focused. We drew it out like an architect's blueprint. Monday. Collect the financial records. Franklin had forged my signature on at least 5 withdrawals. We trace every dollar. Tuesday. Aisha would prepare the slideshow, photos, transactions, DNA results, all neatly organized on a drive labeled anniversary. Wednesday. I'd meet with my lawyer to sign the divorce papers, dated and ready to serve at the ceremony. Thursday. Aisha would contact her friend in the precinct, a detective she trusted, to ensure there'd be officers nearby in case Franklin or Madison tried to run. Friday, the wedding. Judgment Day. I remember tracing my finger across that plan like it was a roadmap to freedom. Every line was a step away from humiliation, every detail a way back to myself. Elias broke the silence first. You sure you're ready for this, Mom? I looked up at him, smiled faintly. Son, I've been ready since the day he stopped looking me in the eye. He tried to smile back, but I saw the weight in his expression. He was hurting too, maybe more than I realized. I reached over, touched his hand. Don't let their lies turn you bitter, I said softly. We're not destroying something, we're rebuilding what they broke. He nodded, his jaw tight but his eyes gentler. Aisha cleared her throat, pulling me back to the present. One more thing, she said. We'll need access to the events projector system. If you can get me in early that morning, I'll load everything onto the presentation laptop. Nobody will suspect a thing. I chuckled quietly. You always did like the dramatic reveals. She smirked. Well, if we're gonna serve justice, might as well do it in HD. For the first time in days I laughed, really laughed. Came out rough like something rusty being set free. Then I leaned back and said, half to myself, half to them, you built this house on love. Now I'll rebuild it on truth. Aisha smiled at that. You always did have a way with words. I shrugged. Comes with keeping quiet too long. You start writing speeches in your head. Elias grinned. That's not all you're writing. I looked him dead in the eye. I don't shout, baby. I calculate. He burst out laughing, shaking his head. You sound just like Grandma. Good, I said. She never lost a fight. That broke the tension for a bit. We sat there, the three of us, surrounded by the hum of computers and the soft ticking of the old wall clock. It wasn't revenge we were planning. It was truth dressed up as elegance. Before they left, I walked to the cabinet and pulled out an old photo. Our wedding day. Franklin and I, 25 years younger, smiling like the world couldn't touch us. I stared at it for a long time. I kept every promise I made that day, I whispered. He broke every one of his. Aisha put a hand on my shoulder. Then make this your new vow. To yourself. I nodded, slipping the photo into a drawer. The last thing I'm going to give him, I said quietly, is the chance to lie again. By Friday, everything was in motion. Aisha was in disguise, wearing a catering uniform and an earpiece linked to the detective outside. Elias handled the seating arrangements like nothing was wrong. I carried the divorce papers in my purse, along with a small flash drive labeled for the truth. Standing in the mirror that morning, I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. Stronger, colder, but not cruel. As the sun began to set, the wedding hall glowed. Strings of lights, crystal glasses, soft jazz playing from the speakers. From the outside it was a dream. From the inside it was a fuse waiting for a spark. People say beauty comes before the storm. I never understood that until that moment. because standing there in my best dress, watching the guests laugh under chandeliers, I knew, by the time the night ended, that beauty would be gone, and in its place there would finally be justice. The garden was glowing that afternoon, too perfect for what was about to happen. The string lights sparkled like they were trying to bless a lie. I remember thinking how strange it felt, how calm the world looked when everything inside you was about to explode. Guests filled the seats, fanning themselves under the Georgia sun, smiling, whispering, waiting for love to happen. Madison looked radiant in white, all grace and charm, her hand trembling just enough to pass for nerves. Franklin stood beside her, playing the proud father of the groom, his tie perfectly knotted, his smile perfectly false. The music faded. The priest cleared his throat and said the words I'd been waiting for. If anyone objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. And I stood up. The murmur stopped instantly. Every head turned. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. I just said quietly, I have something to show you. Before anyone could move, I pressed the small remote in my palm. The giant screen behind the altar flickered to life. First came the pictures, Franklin and Madison, walking hand in hand into the St. Regis, her laughter caught mid-frame, his arm around her waist. Then the transactions. Line after line of withdrawals, forged signatures, the money trail leading straight from our joint account. Finally, the DNA report appeared, cold black letters spelling out the kind of truth no one could deny. Gasps rippled through the garden. Someone dropped a champagne glass. Madison's face went white, then red. Franklin froze where he stood, the smile gone, his mouth opening but no words coming out. I stepped forward, my heels sinking slightly into the grass, my voice calm but cutting. You didn't just cheat on me, I said, looking straight at him. You robbed our son of a pure beginning. No one moved. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. Then chaos broke loose. Madison backed away, tears streaming, shouting, "It's not what it looks like." Franklin reached for her, but she pulled back, the picture of guilt and panic. That's when Aisha appeared, stepping out from the crowd in her black suit and badge. Actually, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "It's exactly what it looks like." Behind her, two officers moved forward. Madison tried to run, but they caught her by the arm. "Madison Gray," Aisha said clearly, "you're under arrest for embezzlement and fraud. You have the right to remain silent." Gasps turned to whispers, whispers to shouts. Cameras flashed. Guests stumbled to their feet, half curious, half horrified. The wedding planner fainted. Franklin tried to step toward me, face pale, sweat shining on his forehead. "Marian, please," he stammered. "We can talk about this." But his voice broke under the weight of it all. He turned to run, but his foot caught on a cable from the projector. He fell hard, the crowd gasping again as he hit the ground. The man who once stood so tall lay crumpled among the rose petals and spilled champagne. Elias was frozen, his fists clenched, his jaw trembling. I looked at him and nodded once, just enough to say, "It's over now." Franklin looked up at me from where he'd fallen. For the first time in years he looked small, defeated, like a man staring at the ruins of his own making. I took a slow step forward, the sun catching the edge of my dress, lighting everything around me in gold. "You thought lies could live in sunlight," I said softly. "But the truth walks today." No one clapped. No one cheered. It wasn't that kind of victory. It was quieter than that, heavier. The kind of justice that doesn't scream, it just stands there and breathes. Madison was led away in cuffs, her veil dragging in the dirt. Franklin stayed on the ground, his hands trembling, his eyes darting between me and the screen, still flashing his secrets. I turned away before they pulled him up. I didn't want to watch him beg or explain or cry. I'd spent too many years watching him pretend. As I walked back down the aisle, the same path my son should have taken minutes later, The guests parted without a word. The music didn't start again. The air felt cleaner, somehow lighter, like the truth had just opened every window in that place. At the edge of the garden, Elias caught up to me. "Mom," he said quietly, "what happens now?" I smiled, tired but steady. "Now," I said, "we breathe." Behind us, the screen flickered one last time, then went dark. And just like that, the noise ended. The lies ended. For the first time in years, I felt something that almost resembled peace. Not joy, not pride, just peace. And maybe that was enough. The weeks that followed felt like the world had exhaled, leaving behind only the sound of what was lost. Franklin was gone, sued, disgraced, stripped of the company he'd once built his ego on. Word spread fast. One headline after another until even he stopped answering the phone. I heard he lives in a small apartment downtown now. No friends, no visitors. Just the flicker of a TV that never makes it past the news. It's strange how justice doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it just leaves you with silence. Madison didn't escape either. The trial was quick. Guilty on every count: embezzlement, fraud, collusion. She'll serve her time, though I doubt prison will hurt as much as losing everything she schemed for. Elias didn't attend the hearings. He said watching her fall wouldn't help him rise. And maybe that's when I knew my boy had grown into the kind of man I'd prayed he'd become. He went back to school that fall, studying architecture again. "I want to build things that last," he told me one morning. The words hit me deep. Because after all this, that's what we both wanted. Something that would stand after the storm. As for me, I sold the house. Too many memories hung in the walls like old wallpaper. Beautiful once, suffocating now. I used the money to open a small writing class at the community center. Nothing fancy. Just a circle of women, most my age, learning how to turn pain into paragraphs. I called it Rebuilding After Betrayal. Every week, the room fills with laughter, tears, and the sound of pencils scratching against paper. Healing has a sound, I've learned, and it's softer than forgiveness, steadier than revenge. One afternoon while I was closing up, I found an envelope in the mail slot. No return address, just my name written in careful, almost shy handwriting. Inside was a short letter. "Dear Mrs. Reed, my name is Zoe. I think we share someone in common, Franklin. I didn't know about you or Elias or the hurt he caused. But I know what it feels like to grow up in someone else's shadow. I don't want to inherit his silence. I just want to meet you if that's okay." For a long time I couldn't move. I just held the letter, my heart somewhere between ache and wonder. The next morning I wrote her back. We met a week later at a small cafe near the park. The air smelled like coffee and sunlight. She looked nervous, her fingers fidgeting around the rim of her cup. She had his eyes. God help me, but there was something softer behind them. Something unspoiled. "You're not to blame, baby," I told her, reaching across the table. "None of us asked for his choices." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I just wanted to know who you are." I smiled. Just a woman who decided peace was worth fighting for. For the first time in a long while, I felt something settle inside me. Not sadness, not anger, just quiet. Maybe that's what forgiveness really is. Not pretending it didn't happen, but refusing to carry it any further. That evening, I drove home with the windows down. The city glowed gold, and the radio hummed an old gospel song, "Amazing Grace." I turned it up just enough to fill the silence. Later, I sat at my desk, opened my journal, and wrote, "Forgiveness is not weakness. It's the final architecture of peace." I closed the book and let the pen rest. Outside, the night was calm, the kind of calm you don't question, you just let it be. And before I turned off the light, I whispered a little prayer, not for Franklin, not for Madison, not even for justice. For grace. The quiet kind that shows up when the noise finally stops. Wherever you're watching from, remember this: justice speaks every language, but peace only speaks in whispers. Tell me where you're listening from tonight, and if you still believe in quiet strength, just say so.